Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to my Saturday Hodgepodge, my weekly wrap-up of all things books, BookTube, whatever the heck else I want to talk about. This week I'm definitely going to talk about what I've been reading and do a weekly reading because I missed last Saturday's Saturday Hodgepodge because I was traveling. I'm going to share with you a little piece of vlog footage I made from a hike I took with my wife and my daughter and my son-in-law at Balcones National Wildlife Preserve outside of Marble Falls, Texas. I want to talk really quickly about one little piece of kind of BookTube advice. I'm sure advice is the right word for it. And then I want to talk about the way in which language evolves and changes and how I think we need to be aware of those things when we're going to use certain words. And, you know, for those of you who've watched my channel many times before, the word I'm going to choose to talk about today is woke. I'll leave timestamps for all these things so you can skip around and only watch the parts you want to. And so let's get started. So I'm going to start off by talking about books. The first book I finished this month was a part of my Black History Month reading, and that is I finally got around to reading the book The Color Purple by Alice Walker. And I think I've already talked about this a little bit, but one of the things I found kind of most remarkable about this book is, despite as much as I knew about it, you know, and I knew some things about it, despite what I knew about it, there was so much more here than I thought. So much more about the black experience in the United States of America and attitudes held towards the black community in the United States and by members of the black community in the United States of America during the time period in which this was set. The novel is written in an epistolary form, which is just letters from Celie to her sister, and from her sister to her, from Celie to God. And we see then this kind of slow evolution of this community really around Celie, which is a community held together by the strength, commitment, relationships of black women. And it's transformative for some of the characters. It is nourishing and enriching. It is a way to, in some way, safeguard themselves from all the things and problems that affect black women in the United States of America and the world. And I found it to be really far more powerful and remarkable than I anticipated it being, and really glad I got around to reading it. So the second book I read for Black History Month was Never Caught, The Washington's Relentless Pursuit of Their Runaway Slave Owner, Judge by Erica Armstrong Dunbar, and this was really good. I would highly recommend this to anybody with an interest in the topic of slavery, the Founding Fathers, colonial America or early Republic era America. This offers a really, I think, great glimpse into that world, into the mindset of slave owners, into the minds of the enslaved. If you don't know, Ona Judge was an enslaved woman who was the property of Martha Washington and lived at Mount Vernon, worked inside the home of the Washingtons as Martha Washington's kind of like personal maid. When Washington was elected president, she traveled with the Washingtons to New York and then Philadelphia as he served his 2 terms as president. And in Philadelphia, she had contact with a significant community of free black people in Philadelphia, and ultimately that offered her an opportunity and inspiration to escape. And I think this book does a great job of I think, highlighting, without, you know, making too big a point of it, of highlighting the fact that slavery in and of itself was an evil institution, that no matter how well an enslaved person was treated, you know, by the standards, the way in which we treated enslaved people in the United States of America, Ona Judge had it relatively easy. But no matter how they were treated, no matter what kindness their owners showed them in deciding not to sell their children, for instance, that they were still enslaved. They were still not free. And what humanity and human beings want is to be free. And I think that's really emphasized here, as is the shortcomings of both George and Martha Washington on the topic of slavery. This book goes a long way to countering the apparently part of the Florida curriculum which says that Washington and Jefferson turned against slavery. Washington never turned against slavery. Martha Washington really never turned against slavery, and Thomas Jefferson never did either. And this book is a great historical account of that, and I think it's really well done. So Let's see. The next book I read for Black History Month was I read Telephone by Percival Everett. This is the second Percival Everett novel I've read, and I really liked it. To me, it is not as good. I almost said nowhere near as good. That's unfair. It's not as good as The Trees. It's not as impactful. And one of the things that I think I've learned in reading about Everett's writing is that Everett writes across lots of genres and lots of styles and on lots of topics. And the topic of this really is grief, and particularly grief over the illness and death of a family member and how that affects those family members who survive and ways in which they might try to cope with it. It is lovely, and it is moving. It is sometimes difficult to read. It is a little bit odd and strange, but I really did like it. The other book I've finished so far is I did finish one of the books for my BookTube Prize reading. So I'm reading non-fiction. I won't tell you which group I'm reading because, as I've said before, I think the books in the group that I'm reading are pretty much books that I would not have chosen to put in a group to read. That doesn't mean that they're not good. The first book I read was quite good, if at times, not necessarily what I was really interested in reading. It was quite good and quite well done. But I am struggling a little bit. I just started my second BookTube Prize reading book, and it's kind of going in the same way. I have on my schedule for myself to read 3 books from the BookTube Prize group in February and then 3 in March, and I'm trying to save the shorter ones for March because I'll be traveling a lot more in March than I was this month. But I love the BookTube Prize. I'm kind of committed to the idea behind it, and I like reading in the first 2 rounds, not so much in the later rounds, because you get the wider variety of books, and I'm hoping to be surprised by some of the books in my list. So like I said, I have also started reading a second book in the BookTube Prize. Again, not necessarily on a subject I would have chosen. And then I've been reading other things. I think I mentioned to you before, I was listening to, as an audiobook from LibriVox, I'm listening to 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northrup. I'm about 3/4 of the way through that, and it is great. One of the things I really like about it, something I didn't know, was that Northrup actually spent time as an enslaved person quite near, when you think about the whole United States of America, quite near the area in which I grew up. And so the geography, oftentimes, of the places he's describing are things familiar to me, places near places that I've been. And that, for whatever reason, that increases its impactfuless. But I am, if enjoying a slave narrative is the right term, I am enjoying that. I also have begun reading How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. It's How the Word is Passed, reckoning with the history of slavery across America. I just have barely gotten started. Like I said, I'm a little behind on my reading. My schedule is not working out as well as I thought, but I'm really looking forward to getting into this and reading my way through that, because it is incredibly highly praised. And did it win an award? Yeah, it won the National Book Critics Award. New York Times, notable. And then, unfortunately, there's a sticker on there I hadn't realized about: buy one, get 50% off. Anyway, so I am looking forward to that. And then just from time to time, I've been picking up the collected poetry of Nikki Giovanni. I think I mentioned this in my last Saturday Hodgepodge, that I had ordered this, and so I've begun kind of reading my way through at my own pace, in no real hurry. And, I love Nikki Giovanni's poetry, so this has been just great. So I think that's it for my wrap up of my reading. So I want to go on to the next topic, and I think what I'll do now is I'll just go ahead and share with you the hike that my family and I did, minus my son who stayed home. My family and I did at Balcones National Wildlife Refuge, and it was a really great hike. It was really windy. That's why there's very little natural sound, because the wind was really interfering with the sound of the microphone. And it was for a brief period of time kind of a challenging, really steep uphill hike. Not like I had to hold on with my hands or anything. It wasn't like that. But it was a really rewarding, and in looking at the footage when I was putting together the vlog, it is probably the most Texas-looking place that I've filmed, I think, and put on my channel. So I hope you'll enjoy that. Here's that vlog here. So, from time to time, people on BookTube like me make videos which, offer advice and tips to people getting started. I love those videos. I always like hearing what people have to say. I like thinking about, what works on BookTube and what doesn't. I've missed this before. I'm kind of fascinated by the process, and I like kind of experimenting with things like titles and thumbnails and all kinds of stuff like that. And I really admire people who do a lot more editing than I do, even though I'm not a big fan of jump cuts and things like that, or really loud music, or even music underlying when people are talking. But those are personal preferences. But one of the things that I notice, and I think that that I have fairly good proof for, is how important the comment section is to you as a creator of channels, and how important I hope that people who just watch BookTube will see the comment section as being. So that comment section is a place to interact with one another. Now, that means if you're a watcher of BookTube channels and you don't actually make your own videos, I'm telling you, you are a member of the BookTube community, and we welcome and value you. And we love hearing comments from people. The last thing I think anybody wants is to only read comments from other BookTubers. We want other BookTubers who make content. We want those comments. We want that input, even, knowing that sometimes generates a lot of negative comments that we have to deal with. But that's one of the things we look forward to. So, let me encourage you. I know a lot of times the things we do on BookTube, like tags and stuff like that, or we talk about buddy reads, they can feel like we're excluding people who are not making videos themselves. But you're welcome always to respond in the comment section with your answers to the tag questions. I love seeing those things. I really do. So, if I give 10 answers that are book answers or related to book answers and tag question, please feel free to answer those questions yourself in the comments, because I think that's great. The other thing I want to talk about with comments is how important they are to you as a creator, in a sense of getting that interaction. Now, part of getting an interaction is getting people to watch. And we all know, I think we know, that when people hit the like button and leave a comment on our videos, that is interaction, and that interaction helps our videos get noticed, picked up by the algorithm, noticed and seen more by more people. But in addition to that, that comment section is your way to connect to everybody else. Your comment section is your way to connect. So one of the things that I see is that a number of people ask for comments, or maybe complain about not getting enough comments. Complain is probably too harsh a word. And then when I look at their comment section, they don't actually reply to all the comments. Maybe they just leave a heart, or maybe they just say thanks to a really long comment. And sometimes, that's all you can do, because, the more comments you get, the harder it is to answer them. But let me encourage you, if you are making videos, to really spend some time in your comment section, the times you can, and try to respond with something in those comments. And perhaps, that will spin out into a longer conversation. Sometimes it does for me, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think that's a really valuable part of what we do. And the comment section can keep you going and keep you inspired in terms of making videos. But only if people see that you interact. One of the problems, one of the things that can happen is if you don't interact with your comments, then why should somebody leave you a comment if the most you're going to do is just, hit the heart button? From time to time you have to respond to comments to encourage more comments. And then the last thing I want to talk about is something that, on a topic, a political topic, which I talk about all the time. And that is the way in which we have to pay attention to how the meaning of words that we use change. And the word I want to talk about is woke. So I see woke and wokeism all the time. Every time I make a video about race or something like that, or I make a video about transphobia or homophobia, or a comment, all I hear, or not all I hear, what I get are a lot of people who, claim that I'm just pushing the woke agenda, that I am, performatively being woke, and that it's all a part of wokeism. And, woke started off as a word that had nothing to do with white people, and all it had to do with was an awareness of racial and other injustices that exist in the United States. That's all it was. And it was intended to be a positive term indicating that you were aware, and that awareness is the first step to, taking action, to opposing those kinds of things, and therefore completely positive. But as oftentimes happens, as has happened with the term liberal and the word feminist, as oftentimes happen, reactionary forces, right-wing forces, take that term and turn it into something negative. So I just want you to be aware that if you are using the term woke, or if you are attacking wokeism, that what you're literally doing, I think, particularly if you're using woke dismissively, is you are fueling the exact kind of ideas that have led to, Ron DeSantis and other Republican governors banning things like, African American Studies AP courses, and rewriting curriculums to rename, to change the way textbooks refer to enslaved people, that no longer they're going to be called enslaved people, they're going to be called assistants to, their owners. That because that term, woke and wokeism, been turned into a negative, and talking about the woke agenda and how wokeism is affecting our schools and our society, is because it seems a negative. Every time you use woke to dismiss somebody's concerns, the point somebody's making, somebody's argument, you are feeding that idea. You are feeding into a restriction, a narrowing of the way in which we understand our society and our history. You are in fact feeding censorship. You are in fact feeding disinformation. And I think that I'm just going to say it, a lot of white people have adopted the term, as I was suggesting, to dismiss any criticism of the United States of America, any efforts to point out systemic racism in the United States of America. And so people just say it, oh, well, you're just being woke, or oh, that's just wokeism. And it means that to me, when I hear it as a white person, that means I'm talking to or dealing with a white person who is not going to think about these issues, and they're using the term as almost like a security blanket, which says, I don't have to think about these difficult things. I don't have to think about, actual injustice. I can just label anybody discussing these things as woke, and therefore not have to pay any attention. And that, the entire reactionary right-wing community of the United States backs me up, and therefore by using woke as a negative, I'm a part of that group, and I'm signaling that I support those things. That's really dangerous, and we're seeing the impact of that kind of use of language, that kind of twisting of language in the United States of America today in a very real way. Supposedly it's us woke scolds who are, pushing for censorship by, supposedly canceling people who are problematic. But the reality is the real censorship is coming from right-wing people who actually have power in state governments, who are eliminating topics in history and rewriting things to, literally censor information that doesn't fit with, their political base's view of the United States of America, and that is inherently dangerous. And so I'm asking you not to contribute to it. Just don't use the term at all. If you can't say something substantive to someone who is talking about an issue involving racism or transphobia or homophobia, just don't engage in that discussion at all, because by using the term woke dismissively, you are feeding the problem. Anyway, there you go. There is my Saturday hodgepodge for this week. Hopefully I'll get a lot more reading done for the next week than I got done this week, and I'll have more to report on these books that I've been talking about. So I always look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and thank you for watching.